Are you afraid of the government? Are you afraid of politicians? Well, I am, and I have a Ph.D. in American politics. Now, of course, for the past several years, my research focused on access to medicine and pain relief. But never in my life have I been more afraid of my own government and the politicians that work there in Washington, D.C. than any other time in my life. Today, you can wear a t-shirt that supports Trump and not have to worry about anything. But if you wear a t-shirt that criticizes Trump, then your personal safety is at risk by someone who does not realize they are being used. But Trump is not the disease. He's just the symptom of a disease, of a particular cancer, and that cancer is called fascism. My, how things have changed. Decades ago, I recall Richard Nixon resigning on national TV at a time in which there were only 3 TV channel news networks. And Walter Cronkite was one of the most trusted men in America. Now, also back then, I recall Jimmy Carter. Now, Jimmy Carter one time gave an interview to Playboy magazine, and he described how perhaps he had felt lust for women. And I remember the religious right and the religious Republicans, and they all just jumped on him in a media frenzy about how horrible this was. My, how things have changed, because now we have politicians bragging about sexually assaulting women and shagging porn stars while married to somebody else. Oh yes, an improvement. And where's the religious right? You know, the same religious right that was criticizing Jimmy Carter, silent. That's such a surprise. And after all, the same individual that is doing all this bragging is also saying he's the chosen one. And nowhere do we hear any religious organizations talking about the blasphemy associated with that. That's quite suspicious. So what is fascism? Well, it's in fashion, apparently, and it's the reason why I fear government and the politicians, particularly those in Washington, D.C. I can actually break fascism down into 3 separate chapters. The first chapter is hate and division, and talk about the tactics that are used in fascist governments. One of the ways is this idea of a mythical past. You know, when things were really great and how things suck now, and the reason why they suck now is because of others, you know. Not like the others on the TV series Lost, but rather others like liberals or intellectuals or people from other countries that have moved here to find a better life. No, it's always somebody else. And there's this idea of this, how things were great at one time. Well, you know, when they talk about make America great again, that kind of brings up the idea, well, when was it great? What period in time was it great? Somehow that's never named or specified, and you get different views about when that is. So when exactly is that? It's a slogan is what it is, and are you really concerned about establishing national policy about fitting it on a bumper sticker that's on your car in a slogan? Make America great again. How are we going to do that? And another way to do this is through scapegoating. Yes, it's this idea about the outsiders. They're the reason for our problems. It's the illegal aliens or the aliens from planet Mars, you know, and they're rapists, you know, they're going to destroy our children and our way of life. You see, what they're doing is they're taking the attention away from their really lousy policies and ideas and blaming it on somebody else, you know, and taking your attention off of reality. Well, take, for example, you know, nationalism and America first. America first as opposed to Americans second, or how about cooperating with others instead of it's all about me, or I'm going to take all my marbles home. And then finally, under Chapter 1 is this idea of victimhood, is the resentment against others that they're taking our jobs. Well, what jobs are those that they're taking? And who is taking those jobs? And what type of data do you have? What type of proof do you have that other people can examine and evaluate? But no, you're just going to say, oh, they're taking our jobs. And what jobs would those be? And it's this idea, it's also this opposition to equality, because if we come with the premise that we're superior to everybody else, going back to this nationalism idea, America first, is that why would we want equality with anybody? That this raises concerns not only nationally, but this idea about race. Is there a particular race that's superior? That sounds like another scary situation several decades ago about the superior race. Now, Chapter 2, the War on Truth. One of the first things that fascists do is they seek to get rid of intellectuals or to subordinate intellectuals. They attack professors because you see, professors, particularly those who are tenured professors, is that this idea is that the whole purpose of tenure is so that you can examine sensitive topics and talk about sensitive topics that need to be spoken about, matters of public concern. And so if you have a situation in which there's no tenure or there's no job protection, if you say the wrong thing, then you're out. So what that does is that causes people to shut up. And that's what authoritarian governments, that's what fascist governments seek to do, is to shut people up. Shut people up, obey our leader, and worship the orange. That's essentially what it is, the bottom line. So look for things like attacks on universities, this idea of research, advancing research in science. There's been efforts to withdraw grants or not offer grants anymore, or cancel grants, and that are in progress. This is what universities use to fund universities. They can't use football games, but they have to use these research grants to advance knowledge. Of course, if you're in a regime that wants to dumb everything down and doesn't want to advance knowledge except for their knowledge, you've got alternative facts, now you've got alternative science, which is not science, it raises those concerns. Because the thing is that I'm very concerned that we're already into a idiocracy. And the dumber the better. And that's essentially what fascist governments want, is ignorance. Because people who are less educated, doesn't mean they're not intelligent, but people who are less educated are less likely to question things. And they're more likely to be obedient. And that's what a fascist state wants. Another scheme, another tactic is lying. Now, there's been so many lies out of the Trump administration that every time that guy talks, it's a lie. And one question's about, what can you believe? And that's where they want you to be, is not to believe anything. Or they even have the audacity to say, oh, you have to trust us for the truth. We are the ones who will tell you the truth. We are the ones that will protect you. This is some scary shit. The thing is that they've got this idea that they are the only source of knowledge. And that knowledge, suggests that we should inject bleach to treat COVID-19. We're in a lot of trouble. And as far as the war on truth is concerned, you have corporate control of media outlets. And the media outlets are all about profit. And there's very few independent media outlets anymore, and otherwise they're going to be corporate controlled, which of course is profit motivated, and they don't want to do anything that's going to affect their profits. So they may not cover stories that would go against their bottom line. They may not ask those tough questions. They may become servants of the particular political power, which makes that state-run media, and so what about the free press? There's no such thing as the free press. It's government-controlled press. And then finally, in this idea of the war on truth is let's have a bunch of cult rallies. Because when we're talking about cult rallies, when we realize that a fascist movement has to rely on the personality of the cult leader, it's understandable why the cult leader would go to all of these cult rallies and spread hate and division. So, you're certainly, permitted to go to those rallies if you want, but be very careful if they start distributing grape juice. And then there's chapter 3, the dismantling of the constitutional republic and the democracy, which is or has been the United States. One of the things a fascist government does is increase in militarism. We see that today with the government putting our troops in harm's way by sending them into our communities as if that's a new way to fight crime. And this is obviously violates ethics and the law, but it's about power, and it's about intimidation. And that's the state in which we live in, and that's pretty scary. Now, the thing is that more evidence of the militarism of our government is that we used to have the Department of Defense, and now it's the War Department. That is, of course, a concern, especially if we're sending out military troops blowing up boats, on some part of the world and claiming that there were drugs on board. So one of the things is that this idea of suppressing dissent. We can suppress dissent through lawsuits, whether they be frivolous or not. We can bully people, try to extort them using the power of the federal government, what we're paying our income taxes for. And here's a few other great ways to bring about fascism in a government, is that you undermine the court system. And you don't enforce or accept court decisions unless they favor your own, and you undermine the legislature. Right now there's an awful lot of puppets in the Congress, in the Republican Party, in my view, and they just do the orange man's bidding, and so they think that that's going to help them in the long run. And they've actually turned their back on democracy because they're no longer representing all of us. Democrat, Republican, Independent by district, but they're representing the orange one. And, they come up with this idea that, I have to, otherwise I'll be retaliated against. Well, you can quit, you moron, because you're not doing anybody any service. But instead, you say, oh, thank you, sir, may I have another, is basically what's going on. And so what Congress has been doing is giving more and more power to the executive. This sounds like a Star Wars episode, Palatine, or whatever the guy's name is. Yeah, just give me more power and I'll solve the problem. See how that goes. Oh, and there's another sign of fascism, and that has to do with sexual anxiety. The Republican Party has long said that they are the party of traditional family values. I see, indeed. Yes, they have a long history of that bullshit, and they actually get a lot of people to believe that bullshit. And so now let's see, shagging a porn star while married, is that a traditional family value? I guess if you're married to the porn star, but if you're not married to the porn star, that might be a problem. Or how about, you kiss the ass of a politician that brags about sexually assaulting women. Yes, that's a traditional family value, if I ever heard one. So it's a hypocrisy. And so if you're on the fence to think that actually the Republican Party is all about traditional family values, be careful about buying a bridge in Brooklyn or swampland in Florida. Just something to think about. And you see, the thing is about the sexual anxiety is that they've got this idea that women are basically to remain in the home. They're to produce workers because we want workers, not thinkers, and that they are subordinate to men. This is the agenda. This is the ideology. And somehow when we talk about people that are gay, alternative lifestyle, then that kind of interferes with it. They're going to be taking over our schools and over our children, and they whip everybody into a frenzy, and a lot of people end up getting sucked into that. But it's just bullshit. They're manipulating you. They're using you. But some people just say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" And that's just wrong. So don't fall for it. And And finally, there's this idea of this law and order. You know, this one particular party is, we are the law and order party. And that was with Nixon. He was really into law and order, wasn't he, right? And the enemies list. And now we've got another enemies list. And so this idea of law and order is just bullshit. What it really is this idea of conformity or of obeying us and loyalty. That's what really law and order is. We set up these priorities. We want you to be subordinate. We want you to do what we tell you to do. And we want you to be loyal. And if you're disloyal, then you're violating the law and disorderly. So that's where this all comes from. This law and order is just bullshit among Republicans. But they've been very successful to get a lot of people to believe that. And that, of course, is quite unfortunate. So what can we do? Well, the very first thing that we can do is say something. Because this is what fascist governments seek to oppose, is people saying something. They try to shut you down. They try to sue you. They try to fine you. They try to impose, tariffs. They try to arrest you. But they don't want you to say anything. They want to keep telling you lies because it's demoralizing to you. And it makes you feel that why even bother? But if you just don't say anything, that you've given up, then they've won, and that's how they come to power. And so the thing is that there are additional reforms, and that is that reforming the primary system. Alaska has got a great experiment and great outcome about how they've given the power back to the people instead of the asshole politicians that have been running everything and keeping everything so that they remain in power. So that's what this channel is about. I felt the obligation to say something. And now, maybe only 30 people will see this video. But that's 30 people. And so you should feel free to make another video, a better one, exposing the harms associated with fascism, for example. But at the end of the day, don't be silent. Say something and let's get our shtick together. See you next time.